So my daughter, my adopted daughter here in Nashville, who did publicity for me on the book, sent me this email. She goes, Lanny, this is the strangest email I think I've ever gotten. I'm forwarding you this email from this guy that says he might be your brother. I was intrigued, and I reached out immediately.
Mr. Happy Living here, and I'm happy to be broadcasting from WITV 7 in the beautiful Queen City, Charlotte, North Carolina, USA. Hey, friends, I'd like you to join me right now and just try to imagine how amazing you'd feel living the unique and distinct life you were put on this planet to live, doing work you love, with people you love, in places you love, and all the while creating something of real value to others. That's what I call a life of significance, and I can tell you it makes for a very happy life. And so can my friends Lanny West and his sister Dori Stone. They're my guest stars today, and they're here to share an update of the unique and distinct journey that connected their lives of significance. Hey, Dori, welcome to the show, and Lanny, welcome back.
Hey.
All right. Okay, folks, we have a very special story to share with you today, a story that I'm calling Lieutenant Colonel Donald Downard's Wonderful Family Reunion. And for my involvement, this all started back in the summer of 2022 when I heard Lanny's story on the Jesus Calling podcast. And I immediately texted him. I said, hey, Lanny, I just listened to you on the Jesus Calling program. You're an absolute inspiration. I'd love to share your story on our Something Significant show. Happily, he said yes. So, Lanny, what do you recall about my cold call outreach to you and our first visit on Humble Hollow Farm in May of last year?
When I did the Jesus Calling podcast, I knew that there were many people that listened to that, and I was just hoping that maybe 1 out of 1,000 that heard the podcast would be inspired and maybe pick up a copy of my book and be helped in some kind of way. And then I had no expectations of anyone reaching out to me in any way. And then there you were. I was going, what? Wow, that's incredible. So that set us on a great journey and an amazing friendship now that we have, and which is very exciting.
So let's walk through that. So on our first visit, I recall we exchanged books. I gave you my book, Turning Inspiration into Action,
Yep.
And you gave me yours. It's called Father, Son, and the Unholy Road, The Dark, Twisted Truth of My Journey from Cocaine to Christ. So, Lanny, just give us a few minutes so the audience can understand what that book is about.
It's a story of my life, which encompasses, it starts as far back as I can remember, and goes through my career in the entertainment industry and the debaucherous life that I led during that time. And it has a great payoff to it, which I try to tell people that while it is a story of my life, it is truly a story about the saving grace of Jesus Christ. Mm-hmm. And I was not inspired to write this book because I was going to be some kind of famous author and be on the New York Times bestseller list. I felt like if only one person came to faith in Christ, or one person reignited their faith in Christ through this book, then that was what he intended for me to do, regardless of the cost of putting the book together. But during the time of discovery and putting all the information together for the book, and this young man that helped me write the book, I felt the need to do some research and find out more about who my birth father was. Now, I had never met him. When I was 13 years old, I started drinking and was pretty much an alcoholic by the time I was 15. And my mother was, God rest her soul, I thought she was a loving person, but an angry person, And and so one night I came home pretty blasted, and she decided that it was time to 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 punish me even further. So she roughed me up a little bit, and then she started screaming at me that I was just like my father, a drunk and an abuser, and so that was the only thing I knew about him, other than one picture that she showed me at one time of him laying in bed holding me up, and she was in the picture, and so I was 2 years old. We were in Japan, and my mother was pregnant with my brother, and that is all I ever knew. And so, based on the two men that my mother married after she divorced him, I go, there's no reason for me to find out anything about this man. I'm seeing it, I'm living it, you know. But in my later years, and when this book came about, I did do some research, and I ended up doing some of the research on Ancestry.com, although I didn't do DNA. So I got as much information as I felt I needed to make me feel good and happy. And I did discover that his grave was in Bernie, Texas, and I did through my research know that his last wife was still alive, and that I had siblings out there. But I didn't want to knock on door. Hey, I think I'm your brother, you know, because I didn't want anybody to think I wanted anything. So that was how the book came about, and that's how I found out more about my father. But I kind of left it at that until I got this email from someone that said they may be my brother.
That was Donnie.
Yeah.
So Dori and Lanny, why don't you give the audience just a little flavor for how the little bit of information in the book, and I think there was a newspaper article, and how it started connecting the family together.
Well, so Donnie is my older brother, and he is great, and he is going to take on everything for everybody. So I think this was kind of going on a little bit before I got involved, but I'm on my way.
Dori, can I interrupt you real quick? Is Donnie the one with the what did he say? Voice for sign language and a face for radio?
Yes.
Okay, so the audience knows.
He's a jokester.
Not true. Not true.
Guy, he's a jokester.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he is.
Continue on. Sorry.
So my husband and I were on the way to watch our two boys play. They're in high school football. We were on our way to the game, and I get a text from Donnie that basically says, "Hey, I just got this book, and when I'm done reading it, I'll let you read it. You might be interested." And there was no preface before that, so I'm like looking at the title of this book, going, what significance? Like, what is he trying to say to me? What exactly is going on there? And then he sends a picture of the dedication that's got a picture of our dad. And he says, well, especially in light of this. And I was like, wow. I mean, I knew since high school, I think I found out before Donnie that there were other siblings out there. I did a family history in high school, and my mom kind of just chimed in at the very end. You wrote it in story form, and she was like, hey, you can say after 7 unsuccessful marriages, he's happily married. And I went, what? And I didn't bring it up with Dad. I think for a long time he didn't know I knew. But Donnie was already graduated and gone, so we'd never discussed it. This is how I find out about the book and Lanny, essentially. And so
what an introduction to your brother through that debauchery, and then at the end there's this beautiful gem of a man. But yes. Boy, what an intro, huh?
Definitely. And it was just the craziest thing for me, because it wasn't the first time that someone had reached out. So it had Lanny reached out, he said he didn't want to, but we would have been like, okay, well, let's check it out, because Donnie had a brother reach out to him, and I had a nephew reach out to me at work one time, just out of the blue, and say, hey, I think your dad's my grandfather, and we just kind of went, probably, let's go figure it out. So it was a really cool experience. And I will say I was chicken. I didn't reach out to Lanny. I did read the book first, because I thought that would kind of give me a background and help me have something to talk about. And then
and then you said, I really don't want to get in touch with him.
no, then I was kind of like, I'm the little sister. So some of that stuff I read, I was like,
Well,
I have to wait till it's not so fresh in my mind.
it could have turned out really bad if she didn't finish the book.
Right.
She just got about halfway through it and said, I'm not going to read anymore.
Yeah.
Okay, so and Lanny, give us your memory of what it was like when Donnie reached out to you and you started finding you had all these siblings out there, and you went down to Texas and met everybody. Just give us a couple of thoughts on that.
So my daughter, my adopted daughter here in Nashville, who did publicity for me on the book, she sent me this email. She goes, Lanny, this is the strangest email I think I've ever gotten. I'm forwarding you this email from this guy that says he might be your brother. And I was intrigued, and I reached out immediately. But what I did in my email to him is I wanted to make sure that he wasn't some kind of jokester or rip-off artist. I asked him what his mother's name was. And I knew Ellie's name. And so I asked him a couple of key questions, but he found me through this blog that this guy, and I cannot remember his name, had done on the military and the court-martial procedures and how they were unfair, because our dad had gotten court-martialed, and then a year later they rescinded the court-martial. And so this article has a picture of our dad on it, and Donnie had sent this to me, and it, in the very first paragraph, it says, according to one of his children or something like that, Lieutenant Colonel Donald Downard was not a good man, or not a nice man, as written in his memoirs, and gave the title of the book.
Wow.
And a coworker of Donnie's sent him that article for some unconnected reason. And so Donnie then went and bought the book, and he says, and he saw, well, it says Lanny West. That doesn't sound right, but he bought the book anyway. And so we connected via email, and then he came to town, and he and I and my wife Leslie went out to dinner, and it was like a 4-hour dinner. It was amazing. And we shared a whole bunch of things, and then we went to Austin, Texas for the CMT Music Awards. And it was kind of stressful for me because I had injured my leg the day before I flew to Austin. So I was in bed for 2 days on pain medication, but I rented a car and drove down to Boerne, Texas to meet everybody. And it was at this sandwich shop where the whole family they get together every Saturday and together. And so Donnie says, yeah, we're all going to get together. So I walk in to this family reunion, and I felt like I was on display, like kind of like some, not in a mean way, but kind of like I was this strange animal at the zoo, and everybody was just staring at Dori. And Dori was like, I kept noticing she just kept staring at me, and I was trying to figure out why. And I figured out she was trying to see the resemblance of me and my father. And then they started picking apart a little bit my movements and my behavior and how I walked and all that kind of stuff. So I got to meet everybody. I got to meet grandkids. I got to meet kids, Dori and Kat and Donnie, and husbands and wives. And it was absolutely just an amazing, I mean, I'm getting chills right now talking about it. And so then we invited Dori and Rick and Donnie and his wife to the CMT Music Awards. So they drove to Austin. Nice. We had dinner. We went to an award show, and off and running. And quite frankly, I feel like that I've always been a part of this family. I mean, that's how quickly we, our togetherness got.
Yeah. So just quickly, Lanny, so the audience is aware, Lanny West is not Lanny Downard. So
No.
just explain that you changed your name, but you were his son, or you are his son, and you're all related. Yeah.
Yeah. So if you read the book, you'll know my birth name was Boyd Anthony Downard, and I was named after my grandfather.
Okay.
And I hated that name. And the reason I hated that name is because I started a career in radio when I was in the 11th grade. And the general manager at that radio station was going to give me a radio name, and he was going to call me Boppin' Boyd. And I go, I said, I'm already getting my tail whipped in school by the bullies. That I would not survive with that name.
Okay.
So the radio station is in Lynette, Alabama, West Point, Georgia. So Lanny is short for Lynette, West is for West Point. And when I was 21, I had it legally changed to Lanny West.
Very good.
That's it. But you can read about it.
This story would be already fantastic if we ended it right here, but there's more, folks. And Lanny, tell us how you and your family came to the attention of Purple Hearts Reunited and its amazing founder and executive director, Zachariah Fike, who is the soldier and World War II historian that took you on the trip to Europe that we're about to talk about. So how did that connection come to pass?
Well, so again, Donnie being the center of everything, too bad he's not here. He's kind of the spokesperson for the family, and somebody had reached out to him. Zach and his partner at the time reached out to him because they were working on a book about the battalion that actually marched. It wasn't Dad's battalion, but one of the three that marched the Rainbow Trail and liberated Dachau. So through all of the research they were doing, Dad's name kept coming up. And they said, he's not with this battalion, but there's a significance here because we keep hearing about him and we want to know more. So we all met at Donnie's house and shared a lot of the information we had. And it really helped them put a lot of pieces together that were missing in the book and connect a lot of families and help answer some questions some families had because of just letters that they found that Dad had written to soldiers. So it was a really great experience spending time with them and kind of going through all of that. And as they were going through that, they got really excited about Dad's journey and how he was involved with everything. And they started researching him. I think they were gone a week and they called my brother back and they were like, hey, we've just been immersed in Donald Downard for the last week, and started talking more about how they had already done this trip once for Bud Goss, who is a surviving veteran of that battalion they were writing about. And they offered us the opportunity to do that. And so, I mean, that's just not something you can say no to. So,
now I'm getting goosebumps. And well, just give 30 seconds, if you would, Dori, on what is the main purpose of Purple Hearts Reunited? What do they do?
They return, like if they find any identification or any medals, whether they're like off in a antique store or somebody finds them lost, they hunt down either the family or the owner and return that to them. So it's really, especially in the case of the one we're involved with, he was MIA. And so it kind of gives closure to these families. It's really, really a beautiful thing that he's doing.
That's awesome. Okay, so we're gonna go over to Europe here, but try to give our audience, first of all, who went from your family. Just tell the audience, I think there was multiple generations. So just give us a quick rundown of who went over on this trip with you.
So my mom went, and then of course Donnie and his son and his oldest daughter, and then his son-in-law.
Okay.
My sister Kate and her husband.
Okay.
My husband, and then my oldest son and my second oldest son.
Awesome. That's 3 generations, about a dozen people.
Yeah, and you know, dad passed before any of the grandkids got to know him. So it was great for them to
Wow.
see
Yeah.
this. Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to go into, I've got some questions about the trip, but before we dive into it, just let me start with you, Lanny, and then I'll go to you, Dori. What's one or two highlights of the trip for you as you reflect back on it today?
Well, one of the big major highlights is getting to spend time with my family. And I mean, we drove hundreds and hundreds of miles in two vans, and so we got to know one another quite well at dinners. You know, going to Oktoberfest, going to the what is it, the Hofbrau House and that sort of thing. So getting to know my family, and then um, and then the one little town that we stayed in on the Motor River, there actually the foxholes are still there, and so part of the younger folks went and camped out in that. But I got to meet this delightful couple, Thomas and his fiance Marianne, who are World War II historians themselves, and participated in making our experience so much better there because they had information. They actually had Jeeps that are authentic Jeeps that the military left behind, and they've refurbished them. So, awesome. And they were all dressed in World War II military wear. And we got to know them, and now Thomas and Marianne are coming to the United States and are going to stay. So those were two major highlights for me, for sure.
Thanks, Lanny. How about you, Dori?
I do have to say, paying tribute to Dad's fallen soldiers in Epinal was,
oh yes,
yeah, that was really, can't even describe.
Yep. So that's where I want to start, actually. And I cheated a little bit. I talked to Zach in preparation for this meeting, and he said one of the things that he was just blown away about was there were signs that just kept showing up. So first of all, talk about, I think, what you just mentioned, Dori, visiting the gravesite of soldiers that served directly under your father's command. And I understand that Zach asked each of you separately to go around and choose a soldier or two to talk to, and explain to us what that was like, and then what the sign was when you all came back together and you were leaving. And I want both of you to talk about that. So, Lanny, why don't we start with you and then go to Dori?
Well, yeah, Zach gave each of us at least two soldiers and their grave marker number. And so there are thousands of soldiers buried here. And the French are so respectful and loving to the Americans for what we did. But we went around to find, and what Zach wanted us to do was spend time with that soldier at his grave marker and just sharing our thoughts with them. And it was pretty emotional to do that. First of all, we kept seeing rainbows everywhere. So we're on the 40 is this right, Dori? The 42nd Rainbow Division. And they call this the Rainbow Trail. Yes. So I mean, we must have seen 7 rainbows.
Yeah.
Because the soldiers painted the rainbow on buildings during World War II. So anyway, so all of a sudden they start playing the
national anthem and then taps. Yeah.
Yeah. So the national anthem played, and we all respectfully, put our hands on our hearts. I thought that it was something that they did, every day. And then the other thing happened. Dori, go ahead. What was the other thing that played? Taps, right?
Taps, yeah.
And Zach said, this is one of the most incredible things that he's ever seen happen. He said they do not do this during the daytime. Yeah. They only do that when they are lowering the flag and at sunset. But here it is, 1:00 in the afternoon, and these things fire off for no reason at all.
You told me it might have been a malfunction or what. They didn't really have an explanation for it, but there it was playing.
Yeah.
So, Dori, talk talk about the emotion that you felt? And then I'm also really interested, what did the kids think about this exercise?
Oh, it was great. And it was so moving to see, to see his grandchildren paying respects to his soldiers, because Zach had mentioned that somebody in Dad's position wouldn't always have been that involved with some of those soldiers because of the difference in rank. But from his research and what we know about Dad, like, he knew every one of those guys. He knew them. And so Zach really wanted us to represent Dad as we visited them, and to see, the younger generation who never got to know Dad learn about him in this manner and also represent him. It was beautiful.
Yeah. All right. So Zach told me that there was a storm coming before you were going to visit the foxholes that your dad was in, giving an excuse to keep you on schedule, because apparently there was great interest where you were, but you had a schedule to keep. And then he said the rain came, giving you an excuse to move on. And then it cleared on your way to the foxholes with a rainbow appearing. And not only that, but pointing right to the direction of the foxholes.
Yes. It was so funny because Zach had even kind of made a comment like, we only have an hour here, and we really got to get on to, if we want to camp out the foxholes, we really got to get moving. We can't stay longer than an hour. Maybe your dad will send us some rain. And there was a beautiful ceremony. It was when they gave us, presented Dallas Hartwell's dog tags to us, representing Dad. And
so just so the audience knows, so you were given dog tags to return to his family.
Yes. Yeah. And so
who he was again?
His name is Dallas Hartwell, and he has been missing in action. I think they're still researching some of that, but they had found his dog tags, and we're working to return them. And so as a representative of his commanding officer, they presented us with those dog tags. Wow. And it was a beautiful ceremony and an amazing thing to experience. And then right at an hour, the storm clouds started rolling in.
It did. It was dark.
Yeah, it got dark, and it just came rolling in at us. And so we kind of laughed and thought, oh, maybe a coincidence. Well, then as we're driving and we're thinking, well, we may not get to camp in the foxholes, because if it keeps up like this, we weren't taking tents. We were going to be in the foxholes. We had sleeping bags, but that was it. And so there was that kind of like, well, if we don't do it tonight, we're going to miss it. That's not something we can reschedule. And still wondering. And then the storm.
How long was the drive?
It was about 30 minutes.
Okay.
So yeah, it starts to clear up, and we all get excited because we see a rainbow. Of course, we're not sure 100% what direction we're going. And that's when Zach said, it's pointing directly to the foxholes. And yeah.
Lanny, what was that like when you were experiencing that? The rain coming, and then the rain clearing, and then the rainbow. How did that feel emotionally to you and to your family?
The appearance of that rainbow was just, I mean, if it happens once, you kind of go, wow, this is pretty cool and meant to be. And maybe it's Dad having the opportunity to give us a little sign, but it happened more than one time. And at specific times, it seemed like, right, Dori?
Yes.
Just anyway, so that's kind of that.
Tell us who did sleep in the foxholes, and what was that like? Just first of all, being there in them, and then let alone staying overnight in them. And you must be imagining what the soldiers, what it was like for them.
Yes.
So give us a little bit on that.
Yeah, and Zach did just a great job making us really be able to feel as much as we could. You can't know what they were going through, but he really helped us everywhere we went to understand what it was like when they were there. And so, we got there and it was starting to get dark already. And as you can imagine, the foxholes were still there, but they had kind of filled in over time, so they weren't as deep as they used to be. So they handed us some shovels and said, start digging.
That's great.
I think the shovels were from World War II because they were pretty.
But so everybody knows those foxholes were on one side of the Motor River, and the Germans were on the other side of the river in the line. And so there was a battle that lasted for quite a long time over there. One other interesting thing is that in those foxholes, a few years ago, they found a bracelet in the foxholes that belongs to a soldier, and that bracelet is being brought to the States by the young man Thomas, who was one of the historians that helped put all that part of it all together. So anyway, so that was pretty cool. But we kept getting pictures during the night of them sleeping in these foxholes.
We didn't sleep. We did not sleep.
Awesome.
But yeah, it was very cool. Zach sent a couple of the guys that were on the reenactment team kind of not across the river, but at least down through the woods a little bit, and just had them like talk, and they were kind of beating on the trees. And, he said, can you imagine they were here and they could hear the Germans speaking, digging, doing their thing. And, and it was maybe in the 50s, so we were pretty comfortable. But when the guys were there, it was Christmas time and after. So there was ice and snow, and they were in those holes hearing the enemy just going about their evening. Yeah.
And by this time they were near the 30-day mark of not having showered or changed clothes since they landed.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that leads me to my next point, which is also about how rugged and difficult it was, because I understand that Zach took you up a hike up hard mountain, and that you could feel how rigorous it was. So try to convey your thoughts, imagining your dad there with his unit carrying full gear and Germans shooting at him, and just compared to how rigorous it was for you with none of that going on.
Go ahead, Lanny.
For 71 years old, I'm not in too terrible of shape, but we get to this area, and Zach goes, we had to charge up the mountain, and when I tell you it was near, gosh, I don't know even what the degree of the slope was, but it was everything. It took everything I had to climb up the side of this mountain, and then just envisioning these young 19-year-old soldiers carrying 100 pounds of backpack weaponry and being shot at by snipers, being shot at by machine gun nests and so forth, going up this mountain. But Dad did his men, they charged up this mountain, and they kept pushing the Germans back and back and back and back, and they ended up clearing this whole mountain pass of the Germans. And it was, as Zach told us, that it was one of the battles led by our dad and his troops that was a turning point for us defeating the Germans.
Wow.
But he said that, so there was a soldier that years later wrote a letter to Dad, which Donnie has in his possession. And this letter was to this soldier got shot going up this mountain. And so he in the letter, he says that when I opened my eyes up, you were standing over me, and with your pistol in your hand, and you said it'll all be okay. Now tell me where the son of a bitch is. And the soldier said that Dad went charging up the mountain to go kill this sniper that was up there. So
wow.
It was treacherous terrain. I can't imagine anybody climbing that with that gear, and how about this, and giving their lives for our freedom. And we treat these soldiers like garbage when they come back home. It's just saddening. Anyway, I
So
don't know.
Dori, is Lanny overstating how hard it was to get up that mountain?
Not at all. Not at all. And you know, like he said, we didn't have packs on our back. We weren't carrying our weapon. We weren't watching for fire and having to fall back every time. You know, every time we gained ground, fall back if there was fire. So it was just, and I believe that that was a battle where Dad was awarded the Croix de Guerre, the German Cross of, I mean, the
Yes.
French Cross of War. Even just getting up there, we just were trying to keep up with Zach. And, you know, we're all doubled over by the time we get up there trying to catch him.
That's awesome.
So, yeah, it was, I can't imagine.
You know,
I think mountain goats would have had a hard time getting up that hill.
When Zach was telling me that story, I was reminded of 9/11. I often have thought about our firefighters going up those, 200 flights of stairs. Can you imagine? But that's what our soldiers did, and that must have been a great experience. Okay, I want to get to the core of this show, really. It's one of my favorite subjects. It's called The Power of Giving. And like each of you to try to express the feelings that you have. I don't think you've returned the dog tags yet, have you?
No, we haven't.
So the feelings that you're imagining having, returning the set of dog tags that belong to Second Lieutenant Dallas B. Hartwell, Company E, 2nd Battalion, 222nd Infantry Regiment, who went missing in action on, I'll do military dates, 06 January 1945 in Gabchem, France, that served directly under your father's command, returning those to his family. What's the emotion that you're imagining about the joy of giving that back to his family?
Go for it, Dori.
You know, it's going to be beyond what I can imagine. I'll tell you that right now. But to see them gain some closure, because from what I understand, these are nieces, and their moms were his sisters, and they looked for him forever. You know, to know that they have that piece of him back is, I can't, there's not words for it.
I don't think that I can't even put my finger on what kind of emotion that would be to be there and see that. It's just some, and I'm not even sure, because I'm not going to be able to go, but I can't imagine, even if I was there, I don't know that I could explain what that emotion is, and there'd be no way that I could explain what the emotion is going to be for those family members that are out there. Yeah, so that's a tough one.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I love the most about our show is all the people that we, in our regular format, they're doing work they love, with people they love, in places they love, and they're creating something of value to others. They're giving to others. And there's a lot of ways that as we're living our best lives, that things happen, and here you are you never imagined in 3 gazillion years that you'd be able to do this for that family. But what it does, what you just expressed, Lanny, is it gives to you as the giver, and to Zach, his team, and everybody involved, but also to those that are receiving, nieces, and then to everybody around them. It's just this beautiful magic of giving.
Well, I want to throw one thing in, and this is probably off format here for just a little bit, but I do need to express this. The providence of God is such an amazing, our Father is so amazing. So let's just think back, just how does this happen, right? Not just my story, okay? But think of all of the elements through the years, from the time my mother slapped me in the face and told me that I was just like this man. Think of everything that the number of times my life was saved by God, for me to be able to experience this moment and connect with family, for Donnie to find this, for this person to write this article about my father, for a coworker to get this information to Donnie, for Donnie to reach out and get the book and to read the book again. I mean, I could go on and on and on to do this, but I have to give glory to God, because none of this could ever be possible without his involvement. And it's just, that's a chilling emotion there.
Amen, brother. This is an absolutely amazing story. It's incredible. The experience that you've shared from the start until this moment seems to have been filled with supernatural signs and chance meetings and family connections and love abounding everywhere and across generations and across your dad's scattered family. So, Lanny, so you have thought about this, but have you thought about this whole thing is based on not only divine intervention, but maybe your dad's wish to bring his family together? I can hardly get it out, even from the grave.
I could totally see that. The one thing we didn't mention, and Donnie shared this, is that Ellie, Dad's wife, who I have come to love like a mother, the whole family, Donnie and Dori and all of them, didn't really have an idea of the magnitude of the families that my father touched, and the siblings, until they did the reading of the will. And that's what Donnie said. And then they found out so much about him. But I would agree, if people can do those types of divine things from the grave, it certainly would be our dad that did that, for sure.
Dori?
Yeah, no, I agree. That's we've talked about that, and my sister and I. There's no way that if Dad had the opportunity to reach out while he was still alive, that he wouldn't have. I mean, it's just, and it's uncanny to me that just the similarities. I know he said early on that, I kept staring at him, but we did it through the trip too. Like he has these ways about him that he's just filled with Dad. So it's great to have that piece back.
And so I am like him in different ways than what my mother explained.
Yes, in all the good ways.
That's awesome. Okay, let's wrap things up in the lightning round. I love the power of words and the capacity for great quotes to change lives. So I'm going to read a few of my favorites and have you tell us what they mean to you. Give us the first thing that comes to mind, because it's called a lightning round. I believe the first one came from your dad, Lieutenant Colonel Donald Downard. Quote, "I believe there is no limit to what a man can do if he doesn't care who gets the credit for it."
Grew up living that. It's true. The credit goes to God. It doesn't matter who it seems did the work. God's the one. We just happen to be the vessel he worked through.
After I read that quote from him, I just reflect back on my behavior, and I am certainly so much like him, because the things that Leslie and I do, getting credit for it doesn't mean anything. It's all the glory goes to God, and that's one trait of my dad that I know I have.
Awesome. So this one goes to you first, Lanny. It's from Desmond Tutu. "You don't choose your family; they are God's gift to you, as you are to them."
I agree with that. You just have to find who that family is.
Dori, "You don't choose your family; they're gifts from God to you, as you are to them."
Yeah, it's so true. And like Lanny said, it's not always blood, but in this case, blood is what brought us together. And I was telling my son's fiance this morning, she was like, "Isn't that kind of weird? Like having a brother just out of the blue?" And I said, no, it's not. He filled a spot that I didn't know was empty.
Yeah, that's great. This one's from
here.
Awesome. This one's from David Ogden Stiers. He says, quote, "Family means no one gets left behind or forgotten." Start with you, Dori.
I mean, that is what it is. That's exactly right. I mean, if you can't count on anybody, you can count on your family. I
agree with that 100%. And that's what our soldiers do. That's what our father did. No one gets left behind. And and certainly not a family member. And you do all that you can to protect that relationship.
Yeah. This one's from Heidi Swap. Generations pass like leaves fall from our family tree. Each new season blossoms and grows, benefiting from the strength and experience of those who went before. Start with you, Dori.
Oh, give me the hard one. Yeah, I mean, there is so much, and I can say honestly, growing up the way I did, my mother and father were 29 years apart. So I was raised with multi generations, and that's what enriches your world and your life. And sometimes I think the people that are lost in this world have lost that connection to where they came from.
Yeah. Lanny?
See, for me, I had no family. my mother and I had a horrible relationship. I ran away from home at 17, and I had no mentor in my life at all. And I kept seeing these families that I was growing up around that, you go over and they have a meal around the dinner table and everybody's interacting and there's such love and beauty, but I didn't have the opportunity to experience any of that. On this trip, I knew that I was not going to, that I would know more about my father from a military standpoint, but the only way that I can know anything about him as a father, as a husband, was to gain that knowledge from Dori and my newfound family. And so I always wanted a sister, and now I got one. And I didn't need another rotten brother, but I got one. Don't tell him I said that.
The show's being recorded, Lanny.
Oh, and I have a family. Although we're not in close proximity to one another, we're just a Zoom call or a phone call away. So that is it's now my family,
So this one comes from an unknown author, but feels relevant to your wonderful family reunion. Trees without roots fall over.
Amen. They do. And I nearly fell over after 65 years. My roots were gone and giving away. And if it had not been for the intervention of the Holy Spirit and then connecting with this family, I probably would have fallen over.
Wow. What about you, Dori?
It's true. I mean, you cut down a tree, if you don't get down to the root, it grows right back, and you can crumble, but you're going to come back from the roots. That's
the reverse of it. Perfect.
I love it. Yeah.
Last one from Colossians chapter 3, verse 14. And over all the virtues, put on love, which binds them all together in perfect unity.
Amen. It all starts with love. What is the first great commandment? Love God with all your heart, mind, and soul. And the second one, right, is as important. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. So love is everything. And without love, there's nothing.
Yeah. Dori?
Yeah. I, over my years of life, I've had my ins and outs trying to figure out God. I was always pretty strong in my faith, but I'm natural questioner. So it's funny. I just always reverted to, I would tell people sometimes that love was my religion, because I knew if I didn't know the answer, the only answer there was love, and that was going to fix it.
Let's go through love.
And well, the world needs more of it.
Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am. So now, folks, it's your chance to give a little love. If you can hear my voice and you were inspired by today's show with Lanny West and Dori Stone, and although he's not here, their brother Donnie Downard was here as well, please share some love with our magnificent broadcast team by giving what you can to WITV7. They're a 501c3 charity on a mission to educate, empower, and encourage. They do good works with your kindness. Lanny and Dori, I love that you've continually said yes to exploring each new step of your dad's Lieutenant Colonel Donald Downard's wonderful family reunion. kept saying yes. And I admire your dad for his heroic service to our country and his powerful will to bring his family together even after his death. And I'm super happy that you've shared your amazing story of love and resilience of family bonds on our show today. So will you each take a minute or two and share any parting remarks you'd like to leave with our audience? Dori, why don't you go first?
Oh, Lanny's so much better at going first. This was an experience, and I don't just mean the trip. I mean, from the moment we knew Lanny was out there, my life has been different. And it's been a great experience. Donnie is already a great big brother to me. He always has been. But the love that Lanny brings when he comes in a room is just amazing.
I love you, Dori.
Lanny, wrap us up.
I had something in mind that I was going to say, and
Dori motioned it right out of you.
Yeah, thank you, Dori. I appreciate that. Finding family. Look, my best friend is my wife, and I have friends out there, but I don't know that I have super best friends. But with finding my family, who I didn't know was there, I feel that there's an amazing bond and love that is filling a hole that I didn't even know was there.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of knew it was there, but I didn't realize it was quite that big. Mm-hmm. And so I am forever grateful for God and for what part our dad played in doing this. And I would encourage everyone from this experience, if you know that there is a parent out there that you have never met, I encourage you to take the steps to connect, regardless of the pain that there may be, but connect. I did in a way, but I didn't go full bore, and see, I could have left it. I could have left it and all would have been okay, but God was not going to have any of that. And so he pressed on and pressed it, and we have now connected. So I'm excited about that. And Dori, I love you. And Donnie and Kat and Ellie and everybody. And I got to meet grandkids and awesome. Nephews and nieces and stuff like that. And they are smart and loving and beautiful children.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Thank you, Lanny, and thank you, Dori, and thank you, Donnie. I also want to thank WITV7 for hosting and promoting our show so we can keep interviewing inspiring guest stars like Lanny and Dori and reaching folks just like you ready to create your own extraordinary lives. And most especially, thank you, viewers and listeners. You can go buy Lanny's book, Father, Son, and the Unholy Road at Amazon.com. And you can go to Purple Hearts Reunited at purpleheartsreunited.com and then connect with Lanny or Dori or Donnie to let them know how their amazing family story has impacted you. You can reach them through the contact page at tippingpoint.coach. That's tippingpt.coach. All one word, tippingpt.coach. And from me to you, dear friends, I love you, and I want you to be really, truly, deeply happy. So go to happyliving.com right now and take our happy quiz, because measuring your happy helps you focus your attention on it, and focusing attention on it brings change and learning and improvement all to flow right into your life. And once you take the quiz, then please give some thought to what we can do together, you and me, to improve the happy of your world, one person at a time. Till next time, I'm Matt Gersper. You are awesome, and this is the Something Significant Show.